She was in her room when she heard screaming between 2 and 2:30 a.m. She said that she locked herself in the room and heard the screaming just outside the door. All 4 victims had defensive wounds on their hands and wrists. It is very probable that the life-threatening injuries that they sustained killed them within a few hours of the incident.
When Honolulu police got a call about a domestic disturbance on the morning of March 10th, 2024, they had no idea they were about to uncover one of the most horrifying crime scenes in Hawaii's history. At first, when officers arrived at the quiet Manoa home, everything seemed normal. No signs of a struggle, no one answering the door, so they left. But then, the caller rang 911 again. When officers returned just 45 minutes later, a tenant inside the house let them in. And that's when they saw it. 5 bodies. Paris Oda, his wife, Naoko, and their 3 children, all brutally to death in their own home. And the most chilling part, the person responsible for this massacre was the very man who was supposed to protect them. But what could drive a father to commit such an unthinkable crime? As investigators dug deeper, they uncovered a dark truth, one of financial ruin, desperation, and a twisted belief that if he couldn't escape his debt, neither could his family. But to understand how everything happened, let's start at the beginning. This tragic story took place in Manoa, a quiet, peaceful neighborhood in Honolulu, the kind of place where people feel safe and where families thrive. That's where 46-year-old Paris Oda lived with his wife, Naoko, and their 3 kids, Sakurako, Orion, and Nana. Paris was a chiropractor with a practice near the Ala Moana Center, one of the biggest shopping malls in Hawaii. His wife, Naoko, was originally from Japan and sometimes helped out at the clinic. Life seemed good for the Oda family. They were gearing up for Sakurako's high school graduation and weighing her college options, both in Hawaii and on the mainland. She was passionate about nursing and cooking. She and her mom even had helped run the Hapalua Marathon together in 2019, finishing just 3 places apart. Orion was in 6th grade at Sikh's charter school, and Nana went to Manoa Elementary. Nana was on the shy side, but always looked out for others, while Orion was the playful, kind-hearted kid everyone adored. To their neighbors, the Odas were just a normal, happy family. Every Christmas, they would decorate their house for the holidays, bringing festive cheer to the neighborhood. Even at work, Paris was known as a devoted family man. One of his employees, Cami Divers, recalled how much he loved his family.
He would get up early morning to prepare their lunch and cook their breakfast, and he would let his wife sleep. I said, oh, you're such a good husband, you know, and there.
But then something changed. In December 2024, the decorations never went up. That was the first red flag. Then neighbors started noticing that the family just seemed off. One person even described them as looking sad. Paris's employees picked up on it too. The once friendly, upbeat chiropractor had started acting distant, moody, withdrawn. He barely smiled anymore. Even his patients picked up on it.
Some of the patients had told me that, oh, what happened with Dr. Oda? You know, he kind of quiet lately or something like that. And I said, some of the patients, is it because of me? They said. I said, no, nothing to do with you.
But even with these warning signs, no one could have imagined what happened next. On that Sunday morning of March 10th, 2024, police got a chilling call. Someone had heard screams coming from the Oda home on Waulua Place. Officers rushed to the house, arriving at 8:34 a.m. But when they got there, the caller was nowhere to be found. They knocked on the door, no answer. They listened closely, nothing. No more screams, no movement, just a heavy, unsettling silence. They even asked a neighbor if they had seen or heard anything unusual. Nothing. But behind those closed doors, something horrific had already happened. One of the officers tried calling back the person who had dialed 911, hoping to get more information. But there was a problem. The call had come from an international number and their system couldn't call it back. With no signs of forced entry, no visible threats, and no legal reason to enter the home, the officers had no choice but to leave. But 45 minutes later at 9:15 a.m., the phone rang again. the same caller. This time when the police returned to the Oda home, the caller was there waiting for them outside. It was a woman, a tenant who had been renting a room in the house, and something was clearly wrong. Her hands trembled, her face was pale. She looked like she had just seen a ghost. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself, and then with a shaky voice, she told them what had happened. She had been asleep in her room when she was jolted awake by screams. Loud, panicked, blood-curdling screams. She checked the time, sometime between 2 and 2:30 a.m., and then they got louder and closer. The screams were coming from right outside her door. Frozen in terror, she quickly locked herself in, too scared to move, too scared to even breathe. But then she saw something that chilled her to the bone. Blood. A dark, thick pool of it sweeping under her door, spreading across the floor. She told officers that she was too terrified to open the door, and that's why she didn't come out the first time they arrived. Instead, she waited until she couldn't wait anymore, then climbed out of her window and finally met with the police when she called again. Now, with this horrifying statement, the police rushed back to the house. They tried the front door, but it was locked. They pounded on it, shouting for anyone inside. No response. Peering through a window, they saw something that made their stomachs drop. A motionless body on the floor. And at that moment, they knew this was bad. Weapons drawn, they moved to the back door, forcing their way inside. And that's when they saw it.
Officers entered through the back door and found the unresponsive male laying in blood in the hallway. He had wounds to the chest and was deceased.
He was later identified as 46-year-old Paris Oda. As officers stepped over his body, they saw it. A kitchen knife still clutched in his stiff right hand. But the nightmare was just beginning. Officers moved cautiously through the house, clearing it room by room, and what they found was horrifying. In the first bedroom, a young girl lying on the floor drenched in red. Knife wounds covered her leg and upper body. She was later identified as 17-year-old Sakurako. Then, in the next room, officers discovered a young boy, lifeless in his bed, knife wounds to his chest. This was 12-year-old Orion. The officers followed a trail of red to the master bedroom, where the scene grew even darker. Another child, face down, deep wounds carved into her back. That was 10-year-old Nana. And just behind the door, as if she had fought to protect them all until the very end, her mother, Naoko Oda, 48 years old, her body riddled with jab wounds. The crime scene left no doubt. Paris Oda was the killer. At some point during the night, something inside him snapped. He grabbed a kitchen knife and turned on his own family, attacking them in brutal, unimaginable acts of violence. And when it was all over, he ended his own life. A family that seemed so loving, normal, and happy, completely wiped out in a single night. The medical examiner's findings only made things more disturbing. Naoko and Saroko died from multiple sharp force injuries. Orion and Nana suffered fatal knife wounds to their torsos. And the most gut-wrenching part, they fought back. The autopsy revealed defensive wounds on their hands and wrists, proof that they had tried desperately to protect themselves, but Paris overpowered them. The police believe they succumbed to their injuries just hours after the attack. The timeline lined up exactly with what the tenant had reported. The horror unfolded around 2 or 2:30 a.m.
A small memorial of flowers at the house where, less than 12 hours earlier, Honolulu police discovered the bodies of 5 people on Sunday morning.
Husband is the person that, his wife and his 3 children.
I think was pronounced dead at the scene. But then again, we'll have more information from the medical examiners. All that is still under investigation.
Police say after the suspect killed his family, he turned the blade on himself.
I don't know if domestic violence, we haven't had a history that when we checked, so what the motive is still unclear at this point.
The entire community was shaken to its core. Even law enforcement who had seen their share of tragedies called it the second worst mass murder in Honolulu in nearly 25 years.
So I just got back in from a flight this morning, and my cousin who lives with me here, she just texted me and said a homicide had happened or something. Yeah. This is a super quiet neighborhood that nothing ever happens here. Like, it's so quiet that you can like walk around at night and not care. I just know that they're a younger family. They're friendly neighbors. no problems with them ever.
So what could make a father commit such an unthinkable act against his own family? Paris had no criminal record. There was no history of domestic violence. By all accounts, he was a hardworking man, a loving husband, and a devoted father. So what went wrong? The truth behind this tragedy would be even more heartbreaking than anyone could have imagined. As investigators dug deeper, trying to piece together what led Paris to commit such a horrific act, one thing became clear: money problems had been weighing on him for years. Paris had been drowning in financial struggles for a long time. He was behind on taxes, late on car and loan payments, and barely keeping his chiropractic business afloat. His financial troubles dated back to at least 2021, when the owners of his office building sued him and his company, Oda Ahana Chiropractic LLC, for nearly $90,000 in unpaid rent and fees. Court records showed that he had stopped paying rent in December 2017 and continued to rack up debt throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. In the end, he settled the case in December 2021, agreeing to pay $53,000. During the pandemic, Paris had also received a $26,934 Paycheck Protection Program loan to cover payroll for his 4 employees, a loan that was eventually forgiven, but the debt kept piling up. In June 2023, Paris and Naoko settled a state tax lion for $7,815. By December 2023, it was clear that he was desperate for cash. He listed his 2013 Ford truck for sale for $20,000 and even put up a treadmill for $800. Neighbors later told local media that the Oda family lived upstairs in their $1.7 million home, while they rented out the downstairs unit to another family, who, by a twist of fate, had left for a trip to Japan just before the murders. Then, in January 2024, Paris reached out to a realtor about selling their home. Business at his chiropractic clinic had dried up, and to make ends meet, he had even started driving for Uber. He confided in a relative, telling them he felt it was his responsibility to fix things. He also shared his worries with his wife, and they tried making adjustments, but the financial problems just wouldn't go away. By February 2024, things had reached a breaking point. Paris told Naoko that he was thinking about ending his life, but he didn't want to do it alone.
In the middle of February, Paris texted his wife that they needed to plan to do it. He said he could not take it anymore, and he told her that their children needed to come with them because no one could take better care of them than he could.
Naoko, trying to stay hopeful, urged him to think of a different way out. She suggested they move to Japan, where her parents could help them start fresh. But for Paris, he had already given up. After that conversation, he pulled away. He became quiet, distant, like a man carrying terrible weight. That was the moment when everything shifted, when the years of stress, debt, and fear became too much to handle. Then came March, and with it, even more pressure. Tax season was creeping up, and Paris felt like he was running out of time. He spoke with a realtor again about selling their Manoa home, hoping to find a way out before things got even worse. But instead of relief, Paris's fear turned into something darker. He confided in relatives, saying something that sent chills down their spines. He would rather die than face the shame of going to jail over his unpaid taxes. And then, in a moment of pure desperation, he made a terrifying statement. He threatened to harm his own family and burn their house to the ground. And it didn't stop there. Around the same time, Paris reached out to someone with a chilling request. He wanted a gun. That person never responded, but as we already know, that didn't stop Paris from going through with his plan.
Shocking details from police on why a Manoa father killed his family and then himself this past Sunday. Honolulu police say that Paris Oda had severe financial problems. He hadn't paid his taxes in years and was behind on car, tuition, and loan payments.
Police say this January, Oda contacted a realtor about selling his house and started driving for Uber to make money since he didn't have enough chiropractic clients.
He said he could not take it anymore, and he told her that their children needed to come with them because no one could take better care of them than he could. Naoko tried to be optimistic and encouraging with Paris. She suggested that they move to Japan with her parents but Paris stated that he was done and too tired.
In the aftermath of the tragedy, Hawaii News now spoke with Paris Oda's mother, Annette. Understandably, she was devastated, struggling to process the unthinkable loss. She shared that the family was in disbelief, wrestling with the reality of what had happened, and wishing it wasn't real. When asked if there had been any warning signs, anything that could have hinted at what was coming, Annette declined to comment. Back at the family's home in Manoa, the community came together to mourn. Flowers, letters, and candles filled the growing memorial. At the top of the stairwell, a pink teddy bear was left in honor of the youngest victim, 10-year-old Nana, with a heartbreaking note that read, "We love you."
Most of the people we talked to say they didn't know the family well, but are still devastated. One woman said she cried all day because of the tragedy.
Neighbors say what happened doesn't make sense.
Tragic. Everybody's feeling it, and everybody's just, it feels like part of your family. We go on our walks, we go down there and we see the kids riding their bikes, skateboards in the neighborhood. So yeah, it was just very normal.
But one person says he sensed something was wrong.
It didn't feel right seeing the kids walk past us throughout the week, making eye contact. I could see something in their eyes, like they were sad, couldn't figure it out. And then seeing this on the news, just, it hurts.
For those who knew Paris, the news was almost impossible to believe. They had never heard anything unusual from the home. No loud fights, no disturbances. Paris had seemed completely normal. One of his former chiropractic patients, Martha Randolph, was shaken. She described him as trustworthy, calm, and professional, so much so that she never once questioned her safety in his care. The realization that he was capable of such a horrific act left her reeling. In the wake of the tragedy, the schools where the children studied stepped up to help students and staff process their grief. Ilani School, where 17-year-old Sakurako was a student, sent out an email inviting the school community to come together, even holding a special early morning chapel service for those who needed comfort. Sikh's charter school, where 12-year-old Orion attended, reached out to parents, letting them know that crisis counselors were available to support students. Manoa Elementary School, where 10-year-old Nana was a student, also provided a crisis intervention team to help the children cope with the loss of their classmate. Therapists like Britt Young, who specialized in helping families through trauma, stressed the importance of talking to children about what happened in an age-appropriate way. For younger children, like those in elementary and middle school, feelings of fear and uncertainty can be overwhelming. They might worry that if something like this could happen to another family, it could happen to them too. Parents can help by reassuring them and providing a sense of safety. For older kids, teenagers, and young adults, more open and honest conversations are important. Letting them ask questions, giving thoughtful answers, and simply being there to listen can help them process their emotions. But it's not just the kids who are struggling to come to terms with the tragedy. Even adults, whether they knew the Oda family or not, felt the weight of this loss.
Tense reaction of like anger perhaps and grief for perhaps a family you didn't even know. I'm so angry this could happen. Who would do that? So it's not like we're adults and we just handle it completely, we process it without going to that angry place. It's normal to feel angry. It's normal to wonder who would do this.
At the end of the day, no words can erase the pain of what happened. But by creating a space where children feel safe, heard, and supported, families can begin the long road to healing. So what do you think about this case? Do you believe anything could have been done to prevent this tragedy? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I would love to hear your perspective. And if you thought this story was chilling, trust me, there is more where that came from. Check out our other videos for more dark and twisted true crime cases. And don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. You won't want to miss what's coming next.